Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be with you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tatiana St. Germain. I'm an executive coach and talent advisor with Great People Management. It's a talent management consulting firm where we help organizations, both large and small, select, develop, grow, and keep great people. And the topic of today's conversation is leadership. This topic is near and dear to my heart. I don't do many educational webinars anymore, but we've pulled together some interesting statistics and trends, and I felt compelled to share this information. And what you may find different about this particular webinar is that not only are we going to highlight some leadership trends that are shaping the workforce of today, or I should say in the last couple of years, but also what is going to happen in the future as far as trends show us. We will also talk about why leadership development programs fail, why they don't have that sticking power that you're hoping that they would have, how to design or perhaps augment your leadership development programs with some tools and strategies. So that's really my main goal. Again, shine the light on why this topic is so important, and talk about real practical things that you could do to enhance your leadership development strategy. So hopefully you get some insight and a roadmap, and that's my main reason to be here and why this topic is so important to me. I really believe that people are the foundation of every business, and great people make great companies. But let's keep in mind that great people deserve great leaders. And when they don't get those great leaders, they typically leave. Or an even sadder situation might occur. You hire a great person, you hire an A player, and you put them in the culture that's kind of playing at the B level, maybe even the C level. And if that person stays, they may get sucked into that vortex or black hole and become a B player. And I think that's kind of a sad situation. This is what some of my coaching clients call it. They lose their spark. And I don't want anybody to lose their spark. And all of that starts with leadership. So this is why I'm here, and this is why I wanted to put this information together for you. But I'd like to hear from you. Let's go around the room real quick and talk about, my question to you is, what drew you to the topic? What made you decide to spend 45 minutes to an hour listening to me talk on leadership? Lisa, you want to start?
Um, yeah, I deal with, a lot of different teams and leadership teams in particular. And um, it's always the number one topic on, why are people leaving? They realize that leadership is one of the biggest reasons that their subordinates leave. But what does that do to the other leaders when, one leader maybe is not carrying his weight? So, that's sort of the struggle that I deal with. And then, like in small businesses, they have some presidents and some leaders that are reluctant to hold their managers accountable, even though they know deep down that they need to. So I'm just looking for a little guidance and maybe some statistics to work with.
Thank you. Rick?
Yeah, hi, everybody. I've long believed that, leadership is the bridge between strategy and execution. And if you go back and look at why companies are struggling in all these different ways organizationally in terms of not just talent, but executing on strategy, in many cases, and maybe even in most cases, it's traceable back to the lack of leadership. So it plays such a crucial role in businesses being successful. It's not just about career advancement, and it's not just about supervisory situations, although those are part of it. I think it's much bigger than that. And I think maybe we've lost sight of the connection that there is between strategy, vision, et cetera, and execution.
Thank you. Jane, would you like to chime in?
Sorry, here has a very background noise, so I may not be able to, proper joining the chat, joining the talk. I would like to just to listen. If
Okay.
it's okay.
That's fine. And feel free to put your comments in the chat. Smila, could you make sure that our chat is fully enabled so people can put their comments in there? And Farzana, would you like to chime in?
For sure. Yeah. So I kind of work in this workforce development sector, so always interested to know every perspective. Um, so yeah, that's why I join in. Thank you. Thank you for
Absolutely.
inviting.
Welcome. Yes, welcome again. And we will continue to continue on with our next question. Does your organization have a formal leadership development program? Smila, could you put up the poll? And let me know if we cannot, then we can just again go around the room. Okay, there we go. Everybody done? All right. We have 3. How many do we? Okay. Go ahead and end the poll. Share the results. Do you see the results? So I'll tell you. Everyone said no. You do not have a formal leadership development program. And that poses another question too. Why is that the case? I ask companies all the time about whether or not they have the program or some strategy or some initiative related to aspiring leaders or developing leaders. And what we find that there's always some roadblocks. In fact, we conducted our own poll on LinkedIn asking why or what's the big roadblock for organizations to have a formal leadership development program in place. And it's usually lack of time and lack of budget. And yet, as we see from all these statistics, and I have 5 pages worth of this, reads like a book, overwhelming majority of organizational leaders and organizations complain about leadership gaps and lack of leadership and leadership development. So I find it fascinating that there's a lot of talk and not a lot of action. Hopefully we can change some of that. Let's see. Okay, Jane had a connection issue, so she dropped off. Hopefully she can rejoin. All right, let's pick up where Lisa kind of set us up, that people quit leaders, not companies. And what I find to be fascinating is throughout my career, and I've been in talent management and leadership development for over 2 decades, this rings true and continues to be true when we look at any statistics, any research, any new studies that come out. This is always in the top, somewhere in the top. So what does the data tell us from 2024? So this one is from, let me get the source here. This is from, yes, from 2024 talent retention report, where they surveyed why employees really leave. And they find that at the top, it's toxic and negative work environment. Second one is poor leadership. And perhaps that's at the executive leadership level, not the direct supervisor. And finally, the direct supervisor, dissatisfaction with manager or supervisor. What's interesting, since COVID, I would say since 2020, unsatisfactory pay started to bump down. It's getting pushed back down the list and hovers somewhere around the 5th or 7th place for why people really leave. So that begs a question and justifies a meaningful discussion regarding what makes people stay, what makes people leave. Is it really the money or is it the culture? Is it the job fit? So what are the symptoms? Let's talk about what's on the surface and what is What are the underlying factors that cause some of these symptoms that we see on the surface? Missed targets, disengagement. Most of my clients complain about high turnover, and this is often when the boards get involved. Perhaps it's stunted growth. I have another client that is concerned about lack of innovation, and another client concerned about poor reputation. So some of these things are easily visible, pretty measurable, but usually it's not just the high turnover. It's some underlying problem that's below the water surface. So what could be the below the water surface? Wrong people in leadership positions. Do you have the right people in the right positions who don't know what they don't know? And it's a matter of training. Are your programs serving your business needs and strategy? Or is there a misalignment? Do your leaders know your company values and vision and mission? Can they recite them and live them? And are they driving those values and vision? Is there lack of accountability? That's become a pretty big topic too. Accountability at different levels. Are there silos? What about executive leadership? What about the relationship between the executive leadership team and the board? Is there any weird dynamic that might be going on? All of that impacts the culture. And also, let's keep in mind that there's different expectations that are currently being placed on leaders around the world. Because in the past and during the industrial age, the mindset was when the worker was expected to come to work, work their hours and get paid. It was very transactional. They found meaning and connection elsewhere in the community, their clubs, their immediate community, their family. People didn't move a lot. Now people seek meaning at work, and that changes the entire leadership landscape and what is expected of leaders. It definitely adds complexity because what one person is expecting from their organization or from their leader could be different from another person. So you have to have a very individualized approach and again, have meaningful conversations on this topic. But the bottom line is it's not about a leader motivating people. Motivation is internal. It's about leaders, the job of the leaders to create the environment where everyone feels that they're motivated to do the work. They're self-motivated to do the work, and they find meaning, that what they do has meaning and purpose. And Monday does not feel like punishment. And that's probably one of the most important things that I heard from a fellow coach. So again, expectations of leaders are very, very different now since people reevaluate their priorities, particularly after COVID. So let's talk about some statistics that I promised to pull for you. So data confirms what many of us already feel. And as I said before, if you don't measure it, it doesn't exist. So we can talk about it hypothetically all day long. But if we put some numbers on the page, it really drives the point home. So data confirms 3 out of 4 managers say that they are overwhelmed. 7 out of 10 HR leaders say their programs don't prepare leaders for tomorrow. And that's the big issue when we talk about that leadership gap. More than half of managers have never received any formal training. And that's not just management training. I just finished a book on onboarding. Onboarding of new employees at the leadership level in particular is sorely lacking. And this author is advocating 90-day formal onboarding process that does not equate to training, orientation, or probation or any of those things. It needs to be full immersion to get the new employee to the point where they're effective and they know exactly what the expectations are from the manager and how to be effective within this culture. Only a quarter of HR leaders feel confident about their pipeline. And again, like I said, many more pages of interesting statistics. So that's the problem. Let's flip over to what employees want from their organizations. Develop us, or we will leave. And I hear this time and time again. especially younger generation, millennials, Z generation. They're looking for both purpose and meaning, as we established earlier, and growth opportunities. So one of the greatest questions that a leader might ask their employee during scheduled one-on-one big picture conversations that they should have on a regular basis, maybe once a week, not once a quarter, and certainly not once a year, is what are your top 3 areas of growth? What do you want to grow? Where do you want to develop? So it's really important. And for leaders to master the art of questions is also key. Because if you ask cliche questions, you're going to get cliche answers. Ask real questions to get real answers. So anyway, the statistics tell us 63% of millennials feel that they're underdeveloped. 94% of employees, almost everyone, say that they would stay longer if their employer invested in them. 70% of frontline leaders want training, and 66 would leave for a company that offers better development. I did see that statistic as compared to, so in other words, it looked like if you were given more money by a different company or more development by a different company, where would you go? And people the majority of the people would choose better development and better culture. Speaks volumes. So we're just building that case, business case for leadership development, and not just a conversation, but actual execution. As Rick said, let's build that bridge between strategy, between conversations, and actual execution. Return on investment of development programs. If you invest in leadership, it definitely pays off. Organizations with structured leadership programs see profit margins rise by 24%, learning improves by 25%, performance goes up by 20%, and turnover goes down. None of this is surprising, but again, it's nice to see it in numbers. Conversely, if you don't invest, the cost of the status quo. And this is really best-in-class companies. What do best-in-class companies do? Is they invest in people, period. They invest in leaders, and it's no longer a nice to have, as you can see from these statistics. And millennials and Z generation are going to be, they will be predominant generations in the workforce in the next decade. So that's what they want, and best-in-class companies are giving them this leadership development and growth. And if you don't do it, it's no longer a viable option to continue to exist as an organization. Let's talk about the mindset for building strong leaders. The way I like to look at it, there's different frameworks, but I really feel like when we ask ourselves a question, how do we build strong leaders? The best place to get strong leaders is to put the right people in their leadership roles. Let's start with the right person when you have the luxury to do so. So that's one area where an organization might invest in. Identify the right people for leadership roles early on in the process, as early as possible. Create career paths, succession plans, understand your bench strength. Spot and prepare future leaders. So this is a little different from identifying the right people and putting them in the right leadership positions. You want to prepare and grow people that have potential. I know of a company that actually has a career pathing conversation in the first 90 days with every employee, even frontline employees, because they have the tools in place that allow them to guide that conversation about where this person wants to be in the future, where do they want to grow, what their career looks like. And then they establish milestones and skills that this individual can acquire throughout their career, and they know exactly what is going to happen in 90 days, in 6 months, in a year. And it builds loyalty and definitely helps with retention. Support growth and development programs. Similar but different. You have the right people, you have emerging leader program, great career pathing, and then implement development programs. Some of them are going to be structured as training, skills training. Some of them are going to be development workshops. And some of them are going to be one-on-one coaching. And always ensure, when we talk about leadership, ensure ongoing feedback and leadership coaching. Feedback is so important. People don't know what they don't know. We all live in our heads, and every leader has their own unique leadership DNA, unique approach to leading their teams. They think what they think may work, may not exactly land with people. And we get surprises when we do 360 assessments with clients, but it's really important to provide feedback. And we're not just talking about annual feedback, we're talking ongoing weekly check-ins to provide just-in-time feedback. So where do we go from here? Talking about execution, I would say assess, develop, support, and grow. To identify potential leaders, you need to have a strong assessment where you know what success looks like, assess people, put them in the right position, then build essential skills, support their growth, guide them through transitions. Don't just promote leaders according to Peter Principle, where you put and elevate individuals because they were a successful individual contributor and you put them in the management position and you think that you rewarded them. What all too often happens without the assessment is that we actually doing a disservice to somebody who is a successful salesperson, put them in the sales manager position, completely different skill set. Not only do we often make mistakes in promoting the wrong people into leadership positions, we don't guide them through the transition. And that's what I'm talking about, the support here. And growth, drive growth through feedback and coaching. Any comments or questions at this point? Smila, do we have any chat messages? Linda's asking about the sources. Linda, what I will provide after the webinar, we will send out a follow-up email, follow-up to the webinar, and we will list the sources. Thank you. Let's look at another. Comment. Rick said, I don't think there's enough emphasis on reinforcing part of a leader's role, which is to develop other leaders. Absolutely.
Yeah, can I expand on that, Tatiana?
Yeah, please do.
I think we'd all agree leadership is really complex and involves a lot of things. But I do think that because, so many of the things you've talked about are so interconnected. The fact that most people are overwhelmed in their jobs means that they're spending a lot of time in cycles trying to deliver certain outcomes. And unfortunately, one of the outcomes that isn't usually discussed is developing other leaders. So if we started to make that connection and we actually reinforced it in various ways in companies, I think we might actually see more time and energy spent on developing other leaders. Again, this partially is a function of what is your philosophy of leadership. If it doesn't include developing other leaders, then it's probably not going to rise to the top of the priority list.
So true. I actually had this conversation with one of my coaching clients recently, getting out of that individual contributor mindset. So it was a little different, but when she became a leader, she was still stuck in that individual contributor mindset. She's an expert. And so she forgot that now her job is to build a team of other experts, right? Build the next generation of leaders.
Yeah. And if I could add one more thing, Tatiana, not to monopolize your time,
No.
I also think that many leaders, many managers struggle with appropriate delegation, that they don't let go of a lot of things that they could let go of so that other people could actually develop and be stretched. And some of that's because they don't want to lose control. Some of it is because they don't trust the people they have can actually step up. And so you got this perpetual problem that goes on over and over again.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate those comments, Rick. Lisa also said, my experience is that most companies confuse leadership development and supervisory training. So true. And Farzana asked a question that, Rick, you would appreciate because we had this conversation earlier. Would love to learn your perspective on how AI is going to shape the leadership landscape. So I'd like to address that question toward the end, where we talk about coaching. Okay. And Linda agrees. I'm not sure if everybody can read the chat, but absolutely she agrees with Rick. They don't view delegation as an opportunity for others to grow and develop. Again, that individual contributor, I'm the expert mindset so often gets in the way. And they don't realize it until I point it out in some of my coaching sessions. And then they go, oh my gosh. In fact, a good leader, they may be an amazing leader with best intentions. And they're kind of mortified when I point out their ego that is at play when God, I didn't mean that. I really want that. I want to build a great team, a great culture, shift the mindset. It's almost like the train tracks in your brain that need to be switched a little bit. All right, so let's talk about a couple of a great discussion, by the way, everybody. Keep those comments coming. So I'll pause in just a few slides here again. What I'd like to switch gears to is a few tools that we use to address some of those the components of the mindset for leadership development and the framework. Taking a step back and looking at individual leaders, looking at yourself as a leader. You are actually three people in one. Who you think you are, who other people think you are, and who you really are. And at Great People Management, for example, we use tools to bring this framework to life with the tools I'm going to share with you in just a moment. So many of our clients use assessments to address those three components. PXT Select Leadership Report provides that leadership DNA piece that helps us understand who you really are as a leader. Without the measurement, you really don't know who you are. You're just looking in the mirror and you know who you think you are. So a huge self-awareness piece is addressed with this assessment. I'm not going to do a full demo here. It's just a high-level overview how some of these tools, and using PXT as an example, tie into this conversation, into this framework. So what is a PXT Select? It's one of the assessments, one of the very few assessments on the market, actually, that was originally designed for pre-employment, for hiring, for job fit, for putting the right people in the right positions. So it's a natural fit when we're talking about promotions and putting the right individuals in leadership positions where they have a much more impactful role in organizations. It behooves us to take an extra step to measure the individual and what they bring to the table. So it measures who the person really is. Oftentimes it's hidden below the water surface because people, including leaders, are like icebergs. They only show about 10% of who they really are. And this is what can be observed through day-to-day interactions. The 90 days of the total, or 90% of the total person is typically hidden from self and from others. So this is where in leadership, it is, I can't stress it enough. Most leaders that I work with lack self-awareness. They think they know who they are. And then something like COVID happens and everything comes out of left field. They're in crisis management mode and they're surprised by their own reactions and certainly surprising others around them. I often use that example around April of 2020. I personally observed a president of a company on a Zoom call with her executive team, strategizing about what to do because we're just getting through the first round of shutdowns. And about 30 minutes into the call, she throws her hands up in the air and goes, I can't do this anymore, and disconnected from the call. So this is the individual that was not equipped with dealing with that level of uncertainty and that level of stress. That could have been discovered early on, and she would have been better prepared to deal with the situation herself if she had the self-awareness piece, and her leadership team wouldn't have been so surprised. Maybe she shouldn't be in the position to begin with. So at any rate, people tell me, oh, I work with somebody side by side for 6 years. I really know who they are. Well, my earlier story that I just shared with you demonstrates that you really don't know another person. You never truly know another person. So what's the 90% of who the person is? That's the 20 measurements that PXT has. We have 20 indicators across 3 sections, 5 cognitive measurements, 9 behavioral indicators, and 6 motivational interests. Then they're going to be combined into 6 leadership competencies. And the narrative in the report is going to give the very valuable information to the leader and to the leader's supervisor, if we're talking about middle management or that level below the C-suite. Information about strengths, weaknesses associated with that unique leadership style, what to do about it, what questions to ponder, how to prepare for certain situations, especially as it relates to these 6 leadership competencies, developing strategies, ensuring results, creating a vision, mentoring others, inspiring people. These are so important. And it helps the leader themselves understand how they can set themselves up for leadership success, achieve better results, and be more authentic to themselves. Because remember, development is not about just focusing on the gaps or just focusing on weaknesses. As the story goes, you can't teach rabbits how to swim. If we have time, I will tell the full story. Focus on putting rabbits in the positions where they just run and jump, and put fish in positions where they swim, and let birds fly. It is a much more productive strategy to identify where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, and be careful of weaknesses, but definitely lean into the strengths. This is going to be the most authentic path to development for each leader. And incidentally, since I mentioned it, we need to talk about the sticking power of your development programs. That alone will ensure and increase your statistical chance of all of your programs to stick, because the leader is going to know who they are, and that development, when applied, is going to be more authentic. It's not going to feel like an attack on who they are as a person. Leadership feedback, remember that third component. Who other people think you are. I'm reminded often of actually, it was a story I read in a book. I believe it was, oops, my mouse is going crazy here. It was, I think it was one of Tommy Spalding's books about influence, where an executive leader said to the rest of the management team, well, my door is always open. And so when she looks in the mirror, she sees that beautiful apple. Well, my door is open. So if you have a problem, tell me. The challenge was they implemented a new IC plan, and the managers were refusing to implement it, or they were dragging their feet. I think that was the deal. And she had no idea what the problems were, what the challenges were, the messaging that the individual managers were struggling with. And so the consultant that was doing training for the managers uncovered this inadvertently. And the CEO was completely oblivious to this. So everything is a matter of perception. It's really important to gather structured feedback and do it on an ongoing basis to make sure that whatever you tell yourself actually lands well with people, and you're achieving the results that you're looking to achieve with your people. This is why we need 360 feedback. There's lots of different 360 assessment tools on the market out there, but leaders need feedback and perspective. They need space and time that forces them to pause. They need to work on themselves. It can be lonely at the top, and it can also be lonely on the way to the top. Without feedback to guide the changes in strategy, it's very difficult to achieve. I said this before, if you don't know what you don't know, like that CEO with her new IC plan, she had no idea. And she didn't ask the right questions. She just made a statement and was hoping that people would just show up at her door, voicing their concerns. What is the 360? I'm sure this group here is familiar with the 360, so I will just briefly mention what a typical 360 feedback system entails. What we're doing is evaluating each leader or manager by collecting data, feedback from self, the manager themselves, from their boss or a couple of bosses, from a group of their direct reports, their peers, and a group of others. So in some cases, we put internal customers, external customers into that group of others. So it gives us well-rounded feedback for the leader. What it helps us accomplish, align core competencies. That's kind of a, I guess, corporate speak to say, to reinforce what's really mission critical in this leadership position. Because not everything is necessary. Not everything is mission critical. That's the first thing I tell people when I debrief 360s. There's lots of things that are nice to have. And just because you listen to a TED Talk or you read a leadership book, self-help book, or somebody else told you that that's the next thing that you need to do, doesn't mean that it aligns with the core competencies and they're mission critical in your position and is the right thing to do for your organization. It also helps you clarify expectations, where you have a language to have deeper, more clear conversations, identify development opportunities. That's really the main point of a 360. And again, celebrate strengths. We want to lean into the strengths, self-awareness, enhanced communication, and accountability, so that you can build trust through being authentic and humble. Upon the 360 completion, my recommendation for every leader is to thank their feedback participants and share at least one thing that they got from that feedback. Maybe it's an aha moment or something that they're committing to working on. That really helps build trust and create accountability, certainly. Just a word of caution, not all 360 tools are created equal. I'm currently working with a fairly large organization where the corporate leadership is very much against the 360s because throughout their careers, they've had some bad experiences. So this is what I call a 360 PTSD. And I deal with that quite often with clients. This is when tools are not, they're just plain and simple, not the right tool for the job. Not a good 360, or anonymity and confidentiality was not supported, and it blew up in the organization's or team's face, causing more problems than it solved and didn't really deliver. So that's why I created a scorecard that we're actually going to share after in that follow-up email, so that you can see, and many of these things I mentioned in there. I want to go ahead and move on in the interest of time. But yeah, pay attention to all these metrics as you evaluate 360. And Linda just chimed in on chat, completely agree. Some 360s, the way they're handled. Yes, sometimes it's not the 360 fault, it's how it's implemented can cause more damage. That's for sure. All right, so just a quick example of competencies that are measured on the 360 I'm familiar with, and we use a couple of different tools. They're generally measuring some of these universal leadership competencies and leadership skill sets. Obviously, communication, leadership, development of others, task management, production, etc. Where I do things differently in leadership development programs where we combine these tools is I actually look at both the perception tool, 360, and the reality of who the person is. Remember I mentioned that leadership DNA report, who the person really is? This is an example from the reports, because the next step after we implement the 360 and the PXT is to create an authentic, doable, actionable development plan, individual development plan that is actually, again, implementable. That's not something that's going to look nice on paper, get shoved into the desk drawer, never sees the light of day. It's important to answer this question. Are we changing the perception, or are we working on changing the habit, the actual behavior? Because sometimes the person has what it takes to perform well in a particular competency, but something is causing them not to show up in this way. And so if they have what it takes, it's important to reinforce the fact that they need to come back to themselves, to their roots, to what they already know, to what their wisdom tells them, and show up, in this case, listening to others. If the reverse is true, or actually the reality of what PXT measures supports the feedback that we get on the PXT, well, then we're going to be working on a couple of different strategies, because it's a deeper level work, it's an inside out work, and often requires one-on-one coaching. Rick chimed in, also 360s are seldom integrated into other processes, such as training, performance management, etc. This is another reason why they often don't have an intended impact. Absolutely. It's like a check mark. I swear, people I've even had conversations with some of my clients where they have a problem, they're describing their challenge with the team or a leader, and they say, we probably just need to do a 360. Why? What purpose does it serve? So, and how does it tie into larger picture, leadership development strategy and performance management? Absolutely. So speaking of that, creating that authentic, sustainable growth, development and coaching, those tools have to be an integral part of whatever that strategy is. So it's not just a check mark. It's not a one-off. There has to be what's next. And I've seen even the tools that I use not work as intended when an organization does not take the next step, despite my best efforts. And they don't answer that question, what's next? Just implement the assessment. We'll talk about growth mindset. Second. All right, let's talk about how to make training and development stick. That was that growth mindset chart that I often keep handy with me. Essentially, this is what we want to ensure our leaders possess. Status quo or fixed mindset is not going to help anyone grow. You want to have growth mindset, you want to have training, coaching personalized. That's when the development is going to stick. It has to be authentic, as I mentioned before. And we need to provide ongoing coaching and mentorship. Executive coaching, and this is where we can talk about AI and impact of AI on coaching. Why leaders need coaches? And I believe every leader needs a coach. Every coach needs a coach. I have a coach. My coach has a coach. It's like a circle of love. It's not a hierarchy. Everyone needs a perspective. I think I've said this before. We all live in our heads. We rationalize our actions and our feelings. It's like we're like ships in our own bottles. We try to communicate through the glass to another ship, and the message gets diluted. Self-awareness. Know what's working and what's not working. Accountability. You cannot put off projects when we meet every 2 weeks. Authenticity. I always stick to the authentic path. I believe that everybody has their own authentic, unique path to growth and to success. You're either green and growing or ripe and rotting. Keep growing. And finally, one of my favorite quotes, you don't build a company, you build people, and then people build your company. That connects to what Rick said earlier. You have to build the next generation of leaders, and that's the job of the leadership. Let's see what I have here next. I get this question quite a bit, and maybe this is where we can discuss the impact of AI, the difference between a mentor and a coach, and some of those on-demand AI tools that we have available to pretty much every organization now on a subscription basis. And they're often integrated with HRIS systems, instant feedback systems, or there's some kind of chat bot where you can ask a question like, how do I hold my team accountable? And it spits out the answer. So that has an interesting impact on the coaching industry. But I wanted to talk just briefly about the difference between mentor, trainer, and coach. Mentor is typically someone who can take you by the hand and say, I've done this, I've been there, let me show you how to do it. It's usually an industry expert. Trainer is more of a performance coach. They train. So that's when we talk about leadership training, and we often confuse leadership training with development programs. Trainer is the one who teaches skills, strategies. And coach actually helps build the bridge between that strategy and execution that Rick was talking about. Between the skills and the strategies and the learnings that you've acquired during training, and how do you put it into action? We all get excited about new information and what worked for somebody else, but it doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. Remember, you're a different leader. You're unique. So the coach can help bridge that gap to execution. Inside out work. What are limiting beliefs that prevent you from implementing and executing on the things that you know are right for you? What are the internal barriers? And that is, incidentally, in my opinion, and I'd like to open this up for discussion with you guys, is the big difference between a human coach and AI coach. AI coach is more like a trainer, and the human coach provides that intuitive inner wisdom, observations, based on a lot on nonverbals, how the person talks about a particular problem, what they mentioned. So it's just, there's so many intuitive, I guess, things that AI simply cannot address. So I'd like, in terms of AI coaching and human coaching, I'd like to open this up for discussion. Rick, you want to chime in a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Fortunately for me anyway, I've been exposed to a number of these new AI platforms for coaching that are coming onto the market. So I'm going to go on record and say, for people in companies who would otherwise not be eligible for coaching because it's too expensive, I think this is going to be a great addition to their development. That said, I don't think AI, certainly not yet, and I don't know if it ever will be able to replace the human connection. Two reasons, real quickly, and then I'll stop talking. You sort of alluded to this, Tatiana, but I don't think these platforms are able to get to the nuances that a good coach can get to. For example, if I'm coaching somebody and I ask a question, I get a response. Um, Depending on what they say to me, I might want to go to the next level down and ask another question, and then maybe even the next level down and ask another question. The platforms I've seen so far can't yet do that, although they're sort of moving in that direction. So those nuances and the nonverbal stuff is also important. Even in a virtual call, you can pick up nonverbal cues like I'm using my hands right now, even some eye contact. But here's the other thing that I think may be the big differentiator. And we know this now from neuroscience, but we also know from our own experience. Humans are wired for social connection. There's something about connecting with another human being that really gets deep inside of us and that we crave, even though we may not realize it, that we want, even though we may not realize it. And AI can absolutely not do that. So at best, I think it's going to provide a tool and a developmental opportunity for people who, as I said, would not otherwise be eligible for it probably because of cost. But for people who do coaching at the senior and executive levels, I think it could augment what they do. So we need to learn how to use it as a partner, so to speak. But I don't think it will replace that. At least I don't see that happening yet. But again, they're moving in that direction.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a great tool. In fact, it's a tool that I use in my own coaching practice
Mhm.
because those large language models can tap into collective wisdom of so many leadership experts. So as much as I tried to read up on certain strategies, I don't know all of them. There might be something creative that we could try to implement, but it's the how we implement it, or how executive coaching often feels like professional therapy. I have people cry on my calls,
Mm-hmm.
and AI coach is not going to be able to ask the question, why the tears? What got you
Yeah.
emotional?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with about the deeper connection. Anybody else want to chime in? Unmute. Hey, Linda. Oh, I saw you popped in. You want to just speak up?
I'm sorry. I thought I unmuted, but I had a secondary mute going. Thank you so much for this, Tatiana. This is great. And the AI subject is super relevant and timely right now for sure. So I appreciate it. And I agree with Richard. Once again, I don't think it's going to replace us as coaches. And like you, I have really found it to be just an amazing, helpful tool for our coaching. And like, I mean, if I'm not using the checkpoint 360 tool, let's say I'm doing a 360, collecting a whole bunch of data through one-on-one interviews, I can put that all of that data into the AI, and have it pull out for me, give it a prompt of what are the top three strengths and what are the top three themes of opportunities based on this data set. And it, within less than a minute, 30 seconds, it gives me that information. So it's, instead of me pouring through, 15 interviews and trying, taking hours to pull those themes out. So it won't replace us, but it can augment us.
Absolutely. Farzana, since you asked the question, do you want to add to the discussion?
Yeah, so one of the thing that about AI is it's a technology and it can improve itself anytime it wants, and it also learn by itself. So it will just go better as we feed information to it. So like I understand and I totally agree that liberal arts will be always superior than AI, but then it depends on the user. Like some people doesn't need a lot of like therapy. We were mentioning therapy. Those people who doesn't need therapy, they just need some direction. AI is capable for them. But then there are other people, users, who need more human
Mhm.
touch, and their mentors, trainers, coaches come in. So
Yeah.
love the
When they,
discussion. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. And when we get stuck, we all get stuck at some point where we know it's good for us, but we know more than we put into action. And getting from point A to point B, or from level 1 to level 2, or the next level. This is where a coach can really help. Because that's when you know, no matter how much data you're gathering, it's not helping you achieve the results or accelerate the growth. Let me move on so that we can get to the Q&A, and then I'll let Lisa also chime in. I wanted to put this slide on here, not to read through all of it, but I've put this information together because one of the Chamber of Commerce's I was a member of, asked me to put together this information. What kind of questions should leaders ask of themselves and of the potential coach or internal mentor? So these are great prompts for leaders to get them in the right mindset, to sort of these are the questions to ponder and ask in preparation to in preparation for being matched up with a mentor or a leader. So we're getting to the final piece. So just to recap what we've discussed, I think the business case for leadership development is pretty strong. Don't need to belabor the point. The next thing is, what do we do about it? Implement assessments. It's a very cost-effective, user-friendly, easy to implement system to simply augment. It's not to blow up what you're doing, it's to augment what you're already doing. It creates stronger pipelines and smarter hiring. Prioritize development. Now that one's a little harder because there was a comment from Farzana too about some people remaining silent, and they would prefer, some employees choose to stay silent and speaking the bitter truth. So how do you create that culture of feedback, foster the culture of feedback? It's not an easy task. You have to show, you have to build trust, and you have to start a real dialogue. So that's why I put it as one of those key steps. You have to foster a culture of continuous feedback, honest feedback, feedback that's being acted on. So assess, develop, and create a culture of continuous feedback. So since I didn't get to Lisa on the last topic of AI, Lisa, did you have anything to add on that?
And not so much about AI and coaching because I haven't really used it in that way yet. But I just wanted to mention that I was reading a survey today and it was all about, what's stressing middle managers out, and AI, learning what AI is, how to use it, how to ask questions, is one of the things that's really stressing this middle layer out. And I just remember back to COVID when, middle managers were kind of the ones who had to implement all the new COVID information and strategies and what's the rule today. So it just reminds me of that whole situation as well.
It's important to talk about it because AI is like a gorilla in the room, and it should not be ignored. Because if leaders leave people to their own devices, thinking to themselves that everybody's a reasonable person and they know that AI is a tool, well, no, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what AI policy is for the organization. So people should not be left to their own devices when it comes to AI. And leaders need to have a conversation. They need to have a training, just like with everything else. AI is a tool, and that's how we use it. These are the guardrails, et cetera, et cetera. These are the most successful implementations that I've seen. Richard, you have comment?
Yeah, I'm going to make a prediction. As much as I'm a believer in coaching, it's of course part of my own practice, and I think it's incredibly valuable when used appropriately. I can see as we go forward, and almost every individual in a company has their own personal agent. This is what everybody's talking about with AI, the sort of this thing that they can go to and ask questions. I think that that's going to provide a lot of managers and leaders with another out for spending time with people. It's like putting your kid in front of a TV so that you don't have to pay attention to them. Well, you can just go talk to your AI agent, or I'm going to give you some coaching. I'm going to bring an external coach in it. The intention might be right, but I think it's going to create a blowback that we're not anticipating. And I might be wrong. I hope I am, but human nature being what it is and workloads being what they are, I could absolutely see that happening.
That's a smart observation.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, and if I can add on to the stress that they're experiencing, the number one reason is that they're not receiving communication about what they're allowed to do. What are the guardrails, as you said, Tatiana? And one of the things that I stress when I'm talking to leaders is, make sure that if you're putting something into Chat GTP, the public domain, it doesn't include any of your clients' names or specific business information, because that'll all be out there for your competitors and everyone else to see.
Yeah, good point.
Another something to know, Lisa, that if they're using Chat GPT, and I think all of the other agents out there can be set this way as well, but you can set your chat to not learn or not share publicly with the tool. So it just stays, it continues to learn about you, but you're not sharing it with Microsoft or whoever owns that chat agent.
Yeah, but regardless, to Lisa's point, it needs to be communicated. And
Yeah.
you still need,
Totally agree. Yeah.
yeah.
And so many companies, I think, are struggling with, you know, coming up with policies and practices around it. And, you know, some are, at least some of my clients anyway, are defaulting to no, you can't use it at all for anything,
Right.
which is, you know,
Some
that's
go in a different direction. Some go,
right.
we have to use AI to stay innovative. Well,
Hmm.
that stresses people out. So again, we're coming back full circle. The human conversations cannot be replaced. If you want to build a successful organization, you have to have real conversations with your people,
Hmm.
individual conversations, meaningful conversations. And please use the tools and the expertise that is largely in this room, and I'm sure other rooms. We're here to help. There's resources. Okay, guys, we're at the time. What questions do you have still lingering in the back of your mind? Anybody? Barzana, any questions?
Not really a question, more like a take out message for me will be, and I saw this quote recently. It says AI is not gonna replace your job. It's gonna someone who knows AI better than you gonna replace you. So we all need to learn how to use AI, absolutely. But then we all know of all those other risks that come with it. So I
Mhm.
think these kind of conversations are very like wonderful in that journey. I love coming those more of these conversations, and I feel like the organizations who are working with AI, they should be more transparent about how they are using our data because that's the biggest concern right now.
Mhm. Thank you so much for that observation and comments. And I really do appreciate all of you chiming in, making this more of a conversation and not a monologue. It's great to see you guys.
Great. Thanks, Tatiana. This has
Nice
been
job,
great.
Tatiana.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Have a
Bye.
great day.
All right. Bye-bye.